Committee. Before we get started, I wanted to share that we will be hosting simultaneous translation of this meeting into Spanish and wanted to introduce our translator with Spanish language instructions. Carlos.
Thank you, Chair Campillo. I will begin with the instructions in Spanish and I will be back with the English instructions. Buenos días y bienvenidos, bienvenidas a esta sesión del Comité de Transporte, 15 de octubre de 2021. Se está ofreciendo servicio de interpretación para esta sesión. Para hacer uso del mismo, por favor desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen sus controles, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom, en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Once again, we do have interpretation available. In the event that there are any Spanish comments, we invite you to use the feature. To do so, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where your meeting controls are. Then click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world, and then select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, or other mobile device, please press the ellipsis, the three dots, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on Mute Original Audio to not hear the original Spanish low in the background. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Carlos. Would everyone please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? Right hand over your heart, ready, begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next, I will ask our clerk, Ms. Francesca Webb, to confirm we have a quorum. Clerk?
Thank you, Chair. We do have a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to remind the members and the public on our process for both member and public comments. The primary members will be using their cameras and will take live public comments. Members are asked to turn on their cameras when they have a comment or question, and I will recognize them then. I'll ask our legal counsel, Mr. John Kirk, to provide a quick reminder on how the public comment will work, please. Mr. Kirk.
Thank you, Councilmember Campillo. As noted on the cover page of today's meeting agenda, in addition to emailed comments, the public may also provide live comments during today's Transportation Committee meeting. In order to provide live comments, you can join today's Zoom meeting through the link or by dialing one of the numbers from your phone that are provided on the cover page of today's meeting agenda. When public comments are called for on an item, if you're using the Zoom platform, click on the raise hand icon in the Zoom toolbar. That'll be on the top right of your screen, and the chair will call on you by the name that you provided. If you are participating by telephone, press *9 on your telephone, which will activate the raise hand function to indicate your desire to speak. If you are participating by telephone, the chair will call on you by the last 3 digits of the telephone number that you're calling in from. The organizers will ask you to unmute when you are called on. The instructions for providing live comments are also on the bottom of the cover page of today's meeting agenda, which can be accessed from the home page of SANDAG's website at www.sandag.org. And all comments, whether they are emailed or live, will be made a part of today's formal meeting record. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kirk. We'll now turn to item number 1, public comments, communications, and member comments. Public comments under this agenda item will be limited to 5 public speakers at this point. I'll ask members of the public who wish to offer public comment not related to a matter on today's agenda to please raise your hand at this time so we can call on you.
Thank you, Chair. We do have one member of the public with their hand raised. Mike Bullock, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you very much, Sandag Transportation Committee. Well, this is the week that we submitted our comment letters on the draft environmental impact report. And so that forces us to get down into the details and see exactly what you're doing there with your draft environmental impact report and what comments are needed. The most important thing that was missed by the draft environmental impact report is that the report should be on real environmental impacts, and that means what happens in the physical world. And given our Code Red climate emergency, the most important consideration And the most important environmental impact is climate destabilization. And the question is, does this regional transportation plan contribute to destabilizing our climate, or does it conform to what the climate scientists tell us we have to achieve to stabilize the climate at a livable level? And there was absolutely no discussion of that topic. Instead, it was about state mandates and whether you meet state mandates. Ideally, the state mandates would be what the climate scientists are telling us. And in fact, that was true back in 2005 when the Executive Order S305 was adopted by the state of California, was ordered, I guess I could say, by Governor Schwarzenegger. And it said that we need to get to 80% below our 1990 emission levels by 2050. Sadly, things that have taken place in the years since that time, 2005, and observations are that we need to meet that target 20 minutes sooner, 20 years sooner. So that means 2030, and that's why we have the emergency. There was some progress made on the environmental impact report in terms of talking about atmospheric CO2 that we're over 410. We're actually at 420. It used to have 411 some date in the past, and it said that we should be at 280 parts per million. So I mean, that should make people fearful, but it needed a picture and it needed to be emphasized. So the environmental impact report could have been much better. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mike. And Chair, that does conclude the public comments.
Thank you so much, Clerk. Are there any comments from committee members at this point? Seeing no hands, I will now move on to item number 2 of our agenda, the Chief Executive Officer's report, which will be provided by Mr. Sani Krata. Mr. Krata.
Thank you, Chair Kempe. Good morning, sir, and good morning to all of the committee members. Few items to update you on. First, I want to start by acknowledging the actions of our president. President Biden is taking to lift non-essential cross-border restriction at the U.S.-Mexico starting in November. Fully vaccinated foreign national will now be able to enter the U.S. with proof of vaccination. Throughout the pandemic, thousands of U.S. citizens, residents, and essential workers continue to cross every day. But this nearly 19-month closure has affected thousands of lives, including the regional economy. We are so linked with Baja California that this is a welcome news for both Baja California and San Diego. Again, we're very grateful to the president's decision, and we look forward to a full opening of the border. Early in November, the staff is preparing to release what we call the Quest for Innovative Concepts. I think I spoke to you before. We're looking for a partnership with the private sector. We're telling them that we have a desire to build 12 to 15 miles of connected, driverless, electric shared systems to link to the airport from the Central Mobility Hub, to link to our amazing and beautiful landmarks, Balboa Park, Pitco Park, SeaWorld, and to make sure that we are oriented toward the future technologies. We're not just telling the private sector to invest their money and give us proposal. We're telling them we're going to be your partners. We're going to put millions of dollars on the table to develop whatever that technology is. We're releasing this request for concepts early November. We will ask to get proposals back by January, and then we will pick the 1 or 2 companies and we will partner with them. I will be talking to you more about, and I will be talking to the board about appropriating budget for that. But I just want you to know we're never gonna stop thinking about the future, and especially the future in this region. And I'm reminded by a quote of President Robert F. Kennedy when he said, and I quote, "The future does not belong to those who are content with it today. Rather, it will belong to those who can blend the vision, reason, and courage in a personal commitment." This agency is committed to a vision that reimagine the future transportation system, the economic system, the environmental system. So if you need more information on the request for concept, we'll be happy to provide it, but you're going to hear a lot about it in the next few months. The next item I want to update you on, and I'm proud to share that as we speak, Sandag is donating more than 100 used computers to the San Diego Future Foundation to be refurbished, offered to people with limited incomes, seniors, veterans, people with disabilities, foster family, and not-profit organization. Sandag want to be working with the community to make sure that everyone have access to computers and the internet. Next month, I will be coming to you with a major discussion of what we call Regional Transportation Improvement Plan Amendment. I'll be talking to you about budget amendment first, and then a TIP amendment later. As some of you remember, we put together a $600 million Regional Transportation Improvement Program September 19th. Just about 8 months into my job. And that $600 million investment was, I would call it more hodgepodge of things. It's time to really look at this and say, the 2020 Regional Transportation Plan, the 5 big moves, want us to look at things that are important for multimodalism, for reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So this budget amendment will be going in that direction, and we believe it will be over $100 million amendment, and I would hope we will have a good debate about the issues. Earlier this week, along with the partners at Caltrans, we celebrated the groundbreaking of the I-5 carpool HOV lane, which would be converted to high occupancy toll lane very shortly. I want to thank Chair Blake Spear, Director Toxa Mashikan from Caltrans, Commissioner Clarissa Falcon, California State Assembly Member Tasha Bornan-Horva, and Carlsbad Mayor Matt Hall for being there at the opening. And finally, you heard me say this before, the Mid-Coast is the largest infrastructure project in San Diego's history when it comes to transportation. It took a lot of hard work to get it to where we're going to turn it over for operation very shortly. And you heard me say this, on time, on budget for such a sizable project is really impressive. Having said that, we are facing some challenges that I want the committee to know about. We're falling victim to the supply chain issues that you hear about in the news. And so I'd like Jim Lethacom, our Chief Executive for the Capital Program, to just update the committee so you're not surprised by anything that might come. We're still hoping to deliver it November 21st, but I'll let Jim be the judge of that. So Jim, take it away.
Yeah, thank you very much, Hassan. You know, since the beginning, this construction began in the fall of 2016, in fact, October, exactly 5 years ago this month. And like Hassan said, you've heard us say many, many times that this job is on time and on budget, and it still is. It has not been easy, especially the past 18 months during the pandemic. And like Hassan said, we've all heard about the global supply chain crisis. It makes it a hair easier for us because this is a Buy America project. And so therefore, we don't have to worry about all those container ships that are sitting off the port of Long Beach. But we are suffering from that supply chain issue. just internal in the US, and it has to do with the materials that we need to finish the 5 aerial stations that are at the north end of the job. That's it. And you know, our staff, and we have the most incredible contractor, and they're working nonstop to try to mitigate any delay possible. And for example, the contractor has staff in Wisconsin right now overseeing the manufacturing of the concrete stairs that go in those stations, those 5 stations to take you up to the platforms. We also have staff here in San Diego that are looking and sourcing, you know, temporary materials for the platforms. We're confident we're going to open November 21st, but it is a risk. That's just 37 days away, so we don't have a whole lot of time to figure this out, but we're confident that we will. And the reason we wanted to bring this to you is because for the past 5 years, we've tried to be as transparent as we can be with the risks that lie in front of us. And we've done that with every one of our quarterly updates. And so this is a risk. If anybody can do this and pull this off, this team can do it. So I hope you're all going to join us for the grand opening celebration. It's going to be a great event. I just got off a video call with UCSD and our communications and our marketing folks, and we're all on the same page with those folks. It's going to be a great event 37 days from now, November 21st. I hope you can all join us.
Thank you, Jim. And just Chair Campillo and committee members, like Jim said, this project will be delivered to San Diego this year. For the supply chain issues that Jim talked about, if we're delayed a few weeks, I just wanted you to know from us, like Jim said, we want to be transparent and upfront about the issues. And finally, I just want to thank this committee, thank Supervisor Vargas, Vice Chair Campillo, for last meeting on October 1st, getting through the pilot for youth passes, free youth passes and others. And I can tell you, I am grateful. We are hearing from the community in a grateful way for your leadership. It's going to the board next week, just so you know, and I expect the board to pass it. But this is a first pilot of its kind, and it will not be the last. This is just preparing us for a future that we all talked about. So Chair Campillo, that concludes our report, and Jim and I will be happy to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Hassan. Thank you, Jim. Really exciting news that you've provided, and I appreciate the compliments about the youth leadership passes. I'd be remiss to say there were folks who were advocating for that long before I got here. So this was really a multi-year, multi-decade movement to get that done. So the community really deserves all the credit there. Are there any public comments? Please raise your hand at this time if you have a comment on this item.
Thank you, Chair. We do have one hand raised. Mike Bullock, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, thank you. Again, excellent report. I take a lot of notes and I learn a lot from your executive director. I appreciate the focus on opening the border. And I did make a comment at another meeting about how technology can play a large role in that, so that we can move rapidly across the border with the same kind of technology that we need to automate our transit use and have it be means-based, know who the riders are and not be afraid of that. And also just same sort of systems for car parking and road use. It's exciting to hear about the partnership with the private sector. And if you've followed my work over the years, you know that I think that we need to attack a really bad system. Bad systems, I guess there's several varieties, but they're all lousy systems, and that is for car parking. And we need to replace it with a good car parking system. And that should be done by a third-party vendor. And the way that would be done is that Sandag or the city of Oceanside, where I live, or any city has car parking for their own employees. They have a bad car parking system. Maybe San Diego has the best one. At least it's not thought to be free. So, but most systems are, it's a bundled benefit that you get when you work, and that and that's a really bad system. It's unfair to the people that don't drive every day. So you need to understand what a good car parking system does. And I delivered a paper in 2010 to the Air and Waste Management Association, and that was the car parking system that was proposed to the county in their climate action plan, and the judge said that it was a feasible mitigation measure, and so it's fully described. But so that would be the basis of an RFP, and the RFP would go out to bid to companies that would be interested in providing a good car parking systems in a line with what's described in the RFP, a requirements document, which is the kind of work I did at Lockheed Martin for 36 years. The reason that's important is because if you do away with free parking, it's been shown you might have 20% fewer people driving to work. Regarding the I-5 opening, of course, I'm disappointed. We should not be widening freeways ever. It should be stopped. And so my one comment about the executive director is I believe the board should ask the executive director, how should the Caltrans, or how should the ordinance, the TransNet ordinance, be fixed, and fix it so he can do the job that I know he's capable of. I think his hands are being tied by the TransNet ordinance. So that's my.
Thank you very much, Mike. And Chair, that does conclude the public comments on this item.
Thank you very much to the members of the public. Are there any member comments? Seeing none, we will now move on to the consent agenda. If a member would like to pull an item on the consent agenda, or if there's any question or comments on the item, please raise your hand.
Benelli, move the consent agenda.
Very good. Hearing no one moving, I will take a motion from Mr. Benelli on the motion. I believe we have to have public comment before, but I will entertain a second before we move on to a vote.
Second by Edson.
Thank you, Councilmember Edson. The items are the approval of the meeting minutes from July 16th, 2021 meeting. And item number 4 is the fiscal year 2021 Transportation Development Act claim amendments. Clerk, do we have any public comments on the consent agenda?
No, Chair, I don't see any hands from the public.
Very good. If there's no further discussion, we have a motion from member Benelli and a second from member Edson. We will now proceed to a vote. Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Bob Lloyd.
Lloyd, yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Campillo.
Yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson. Supervisor Anderson, I'm so sorry. Could you repeat that for me for the record?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
For East County, Councilmember Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Thank you. For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Montgomery Stepp.
Montgomery Stepp, yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Edson, yes.
Thank you. For the Port of San Diego, Commissioner Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
Thank you. And South County is absent. So that item does pass with those members present.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to our reports, and item number 5 is the North Coast Corridor Program status update. We have a presentation today, an information item only from Mr. Alan Kossip. Please begin, and good morning.
Good morning, Vice Chair and members. I'll wait for the presentation to pop up here.
take it, we're just waiting just a few more seconds for the link to work.
Apologize for the delay here. Maybe Mr. Kosup, if you could just start with your introductory remarks and we'll get it going.
Sure. As many of you know, the North Coast Corridor is an $870 million construction package. Really one of the first complete corridor projects, if not the first complete corridor project in the state. It includes 4 major elements, which was the double track of the Low Sand Line in Cardiff, restoration of the San Alejo Lagoon, construction of 7 miles of active transportation features, and then construction of 13 miles of new managed lanes. And the managed lanes go from Solana Beach all the way up to 78. And much like Midcoast, the project remains on schedule and on budget. The project was started in 2017 and will be 2 of the pieces have actually been completed to date, including the double track in Cardiff and the San Alejo Lagoon restoration. Both of those are substantially complete. And as Hassan mentioned, we broke ground this week on the last 4-mile segment. And those 4 miles will go from Palomar Airport Road all the way to Route 78. So we've got 13 miles in total of managed lanes. 9 miles are already under construction. Those were the segment from Solana Beach to Palomar Airport Road. Those will open this calendar year. So by the end of this year, we will have the first 9 miles open. And then the 4 miles that we began construction this week will be open at the end of next year, end of 2022. And we'll be out of the corridor in total by 2023. I do want to highlight that this week's event was really a partnership that got us here between Sandag, Caltrans, and CTC, because the money that allowed us to break ground this week was really a 2-year advancement of money that we had with the state. So I really appreciate the partnership between the 3 parties that allowed us to do that. We were ready, and the money, just because of normal cash flow, was out a couple of years, and we all worked hard to bring that forward so that we could get those last 4 miles under construction. So I think that's a lot of good news. A lot of this is going to be photo-based, which is going to be a little difficult. So some of what you'll start seeing is us at the south end wrapping construction up. So as I said, we'll be open to traffic by the end of the year, particularly there at San Alejo. As if you drive that regularly, you know that there's a little kink in the road. As we replace that bridge, we've kind of got traffic to the outside. Next month, we'll move that traffic back to the middle and sort of restore normal flow. If you also drive through that area, you know that the construction field office was at, there we go. Thanks, Phil. Maybe hit slide 5 if you could. Trying to jump ahead. Perfect. Thank you.
Sorry, we're having trouble with the actual starting of the PowerPoint, but if I can show it in this view, we'll just try from here if that's okay.
Yeah, perfect. Thank you very much. So this is at the south end of the job, and you're looking west at San Alejo Lagoon. And this is an example of us sort of wrapping up construction and moving and putting things back together the way they were when we got here, and hopefully better. And this bridge is, we started replacement of this bridge 4 years ago. And this bridge really was the bottleneck both for I-5, but also for the lagoon. And so this eastern basin for tidal flushing had a really restricted flow. And so the work there has not only widened the bridge for I-5, but it's lengthened the bridge for the San Alejo Lagoon. And what we're doing now is the bridge is complete. We removed the false work in the last couple of months, and now we're taking out all the fill that was under the bridge. And so basically think of it as a cork in the bottle. little by little, we'll be taking that dirt out and restoring tidal flushing to the eastern basin, which is a huge win for the environmental health of that lagoon. Go to next slide. And removing this soil because of the limited headroom is kind of a slow process, but we're making headway. The good news about the material that we're moving out of here, it's basically beach sand material. And so some of it goes back into the lagoon and creates some nesting areas. Some of it will be put on the beach as part of a second lift of sand replenishment. That sand replenishment project will start in early December and wrap up in spring of next year. And then the material that we're moving into the lagoon will wrap up here in the next month or two. I want to appreciate the patience of Solana Beach and Encinitas as we've been moving the material around through their city. Appreciate it, and the light is at the end of the tunnel. Next slide. This is that kink I was referring to, and by November, early November, that traffic will be moved back onto the new bridge, and it'll be more of a straight shot. Next slide. If you haven't been down in the lagoon and you look towards the freeway, this is what the walls, retaining walls, look like down there. We've put a lot of effort into the aesthetic treatment. I think they really turned out great. If you drive it, you're starting to see in the last couple of weeks a lot more planting, replacement planting going on, and you'll see that down in the lagoon too. You see the wall is complete, but the field leading up to the wall still needs to be planted, and we're getting to that in the next couple of months. Next slide. And this was the large construction field office. It was a co-location facility for both the contractor, Standag employees, and Caltrans employees. We are beginning to break that down last month. By the end of this month, those buildings will be out of there, and we can restore it both. We're going to build a multi-use park and ride that'll be both a trailhead, bike node, as well as a traditional park and ride with EV charging. There will also be a community garden up there as part of the San Alejo Lagoon facility. So that's beginning to go in place. Next slide. As we move to the north through Encinitas, both the inside widening and the outside widening is complete through Encinitas. The new pavement is done. This is the piece that will be open to traffic by the end of this calendar year. As we move into next slide, up a little bit farther to the north in Carlsbad, we still have some outside widening to complete, but that's going on schedule. We're also beginning the construction of retaining walls. Sound walls. A little bit like the Midcoast discussion you heard from Jim Lithicum earlier, we're also seeing some supply chain challenges on the sound walls. These are large glass panels. So we are struggling with some of that material. But we, like Jim, we hope to have that wrapped up here shortly. Next slide. So in summary of the total NCC contract, it is an $870 million contract. Inside of it are a number of subcontracts that we've developed with the contractor. This is a joint venture, FSSW, Flatiron, Skanska, Stacy Whitbeck. It's a CMGC project. Those projects with the green check marks have been completed, substantially complete. And then you see the other three that are still under construction. Those are primarily the highway projects. Next slide. I do want to point out that at that north end where we're breaking ground this week, much like we've done on the south end, it'll be a 55-mile-an-hour speed limit through the construction zone. In addition to the 55-mile-an-hour speed limit, we're going to pilot some orange striping. This is striping that other states use in construction zones, and this is the first time we're trying it in California. And basically, it's a way of getting people's awareness raised, and so that they're not distracted and they lower their speeds through construction zones. Currently, we're finding that about 30% of the traffic off-peak travels in excess of 75 miles an hour. And so, between the changeable message signs, increased enforcement, and the orange stripe, we're hoping to bring that down and make the facility safer during construction. And basically, next slide, you'll see a couple of different patterns that we're piloting out there to look at their effectiveness. So last slide. So just, looking forward, we do see, as I said, the first carpool lanes from Loma Santa Fe to Palomar Airport Road still opening the end of this calendar year. We hope to have all of that dirt removed under the bridge at San Alejo Lagoon and restore tidal flushing early in 2022. There's 5 more miles of bike and pedestrian network that we're wrapping up, and that will be open in spring of 22. And then the Cardiff Beach Sand Replenishment Phase 2, which will start this December of 21. So here, it's beginning here shortly. So with that, I'll open up if there's any questions.
Thank you very much, Alan, for the presentation, and really appreciate your hard work on this. We will now move to public comment. Please raise your hand at this time if you have any comments on the item.
Thank you, Chair. We do have one member of the public who'd like to speak. Mike Bullock, you can go ahead whenever you're ready.
Okay, well, thank you very much. This is Mike Bullock, and I live up in Oceanside, exactly where those managed lanes, as you're calling them, are going to end at 78, starting at the airport road, Palomar Airport Road, last 4 miles of a 13-mile project. So I'm going to say what absolutely needs to be said, and that is that this is a disaster for the environment. We should never be widening a freeway at this point in time. We just know too much, and we've known it for many decades, actually. But Caltrans knows this. I hope people are aware. This is a transportation committee. You're aware that Caltrans has issued a CAPTI report, and that stands for Climate Action Plan Transportation Infrastructure. And they talk about what transportation infrastructure is appropriate in the world that we live in, where and for their climate action plan. And there is extensive information in there about induced traffic demand. And we know that anything that you do to create space on the road, so to speak, or increase the probability of a lower travel time is going to induce enough traffic that will put you right back where you were. And I'm sure your executive director is well aware of this. In a speech, I don't think it was more than a month ago, he said that yes, the Caltrans, the TransNet ordinance has these additional lanes going all the way through Oceanside, but that was not possible because there was no money. Well, I think we're well aware that things are happening in Washington, D.C., and there may become money available. And so how are you going to stop this thing? How are you going to stop widening the freeway, which gives us no chance at stabilizing the climate at a livable level, because we do need to reduce vehicle miles traveled. And let me say, I have done a report showing how cars and light-duty trucks could achieve the 2030 climate stabilizing target. And I'll tell you, I have electrification of new cars at 100% by 2030, not 2035, but 2030. And I have to do that. And still the driving reduction is 32%, expressed exactly along the conventions of SB 375. So I know what I'm talking about, that this is peer-reviewed work as to what we have to do. And it breaks my heart that instead we're widening the freeway, and no one I'm afraid, nobody else in the Transportation Committee is going to point out. We know this is not the way to reduce vehicle miles traveled, and we know that we have to reduce vehicle miles traveled. Now, I know your executive director knows that, and that's why he needs to be tasked with coming back and with the changes that are needed to TransNet so that he can do what I know he wants to do. He wants to achieve climate stabilization. He understands his responsibility to young people. And when I say young people, I'm talking about people that are 40 and 50. Those are young people, and they are in a lot of trouble. Their life their quality of life may dramatically decrease because if these destabilizing systems become dominant, we're going to lose any hope. And we don't know what kind of climate we have now.
I'm so sorry to stop you there, Mike, but your time has expired, and I apologize that we're having technical difficulties this morning and couldn't show you the visual timer there. But Chair, that does conclude the public comments on this item.
Thank you, Clerk, and thank you to the members of the public for expressing your opinions and giving us good thoughts to think about, or good questions to ponder and to really research and dive into. Do we have any member comments at this point? I see a few hands raised. I will recognize Councilmember Zito.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Appreciate it. And also thanks, Alan, for the great presentation. We're all looking forward to the completion of the Lagoon project. I did have one question, which was trying to suss out from your presentation on the material movement side. It sounds like the material movement will end early next year as far as making use of the roads and doing the trucking activity. Is about that what the current target is?
I actually think the trucking activity through Solana Beach will end much sooner than that. We're segueing here to dredge here shortly. So I think we're actually in the last couple of weeks of movement down North Rios.
North Rios, yeah. Okay, well, great. Thanks for that update. And I also just wanted to do a shout out and a thank to Caltrans for their cooperative and collaborative approach to this project. It's worth noting that one of the items, I also sit on the board for the San Alejo JPA, which is a water treatment plant on the north of the lagoon. And we've worked with Caltrans to extend the bicycle facility, speaking of climate friendly transportation mechanisms, through a very nice part of that property to create a very nice path that will be able to be used by a lot of the people in the area. And many folks I expect will enjoy that because it does end right at the entrance to the lagoon across from the lagoon facilities. And we've got a nice intersection and there's going to be some parking there. And it's been good working with Caltrans to enable this really cool project. We also were able to work with Caltrans to get some of the trails open and earlier than expected and keep them open for use during the summer while this project's going on, because this is a fairly popular hiking area at this point in time. And that's been great as well. And also, Alan, thanks for your help on the trucking activity and making sure that the impacts are minimal to the local communities, because it is very important, since this is such an extensive and lengthy project, that we can do what we can to make sure that the communities in which we're doing the work are handled well and the issues are taken care of. And I think your team is doing well with that. So I just want to make sure that was on the record and thank your team and you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilmember Zito. Well said. I will now recognize Councilmember Mosca.
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. I'm not going to repeat what my colleague from Solana Beach just said. I would just highlight and say I agree with his comments in terms of working with Caltrans from the Encinitas perspective, and also the benefits of the project. And also I was going to ask very similar questions of Caltrans. So thank you for those. And I appreciate the comment from a member of public. I think that many of us agree with the sentiments. But aside from that, I just really wanted to raise my hand to say that I'm thankful to Caltrans for their coordination and collaboration. This project has really helped out the area in a big way. He's already kind of highlighted some of that in terms of the center replenishment, which is so critically important. This has really kind of connected multiple dots, as my colleague said, Councilmember Zito, with the dredging of the lagoon, which has helped out in a big way with the trails that are coming parallel to the I-5 freeway through the area of the lagoon, up through the wastewater authority there on Manchester, the multiple trails, which the gaps are closed. This really helps with mobility, biking, walking in that area. And so I'm very thankful, and a lot of Encinitas are really looking forward to the day when a lot of this is done. So, but thank you, Alan. Wanted to ask about the orange lanes. Obviously, this is going to be piloted right in the middle, kind of core of our city. And so just wanted to ask, oh, sorry, my video's not on. Sorry about that. I just want to ask if when this has been kind of rolled out in other places, I'm not aware of any places within the state of California where we've done this, but you may know differently. But when they've rolled this out previously, is there anything else in addition to kind of just painting the lanes out there that that they've done to communicate with folks? Obviously, some drivers will kind of be confused by the paint, and that may actually cause the what you want to happen, which is folks to kind of slow down because they're trying to process what's going on there. But is there anything else in addition to what painting that we should be doing to communicate with residents and visitors, what that means? Alan?
So the section is in Carlsbad. It actually, just so you know, it isn't, it's just that last 4 miles that we're going to pilot it. It has not yet been tried in California, and I shouldn't say tried, right? I mean, we do see it work in other states, right? And they've done surveys, and it's just has never been used yet in California. So it is tested. Other than the changeable message signs that we put out and tell people that we've got a 55-mile-an-hour zone and that we're doing actually enhanced enforcement. And we will do some additional outreach as it relates to the orange striping through social media. But I don't think you'll see any other signs in the corridor specific to the orange striping.
All right, well, I'm sorry. No, I would just, I think that just to give a plug to communication folks, I think that you guys do a great job. And if there's anything in addition that we can do to kind of just put out some of those communications about what those mean, that would be great. One other question too, are you, so the new parking ride, is that deeded over to the Nature Collective, the formerly known as San Alejo Lagoon Conservancy, or is that partially held by the state and partially held by the Nature Collective? I asked that question just because, just thinking about collaborations in the future between the city of Encinitas and that parking lot.
Right, the community gardens, which are a little bit uphill, which is kind of where the offices are now, that will be sort of the community gardens area. That will be deeded over to the foundation. And then downhill is where the park and ride is, and that would be stick with us, the state. So,
all right, perfect. All right, excellent. Thank you, Alan, and thank you for all the work that great work that Sandag's doing and Caltrans is doing. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Mosca. Seeing no further hands, thank you very much, Mr. Cossip, for your presentation and for your diligence on this, and we really appreciate all your efforts. We will now be moving on to item number 6, which is the TransNet Environmental Mitigation Program for fiscal year 2022 annual funding. A presentation will be provided by Ms. Kim Smith. Good morning, Ms. Smith. Please begin your presentation.
Oh, great. Good morning, Chair Campillo and members of the Transportation Committee. Again, my name is Kim Smith, and I manage the Environmental Mitigation Program here at Sandag. Item number 6 before you today is related to actions necessary to implement the Environmental Mitigation Program in fiscal year 22. Next slide, please. So just as a quick reminder, the TransNet Environmental Mitigation Program provides funding to mitigate habitat impacts from our local and regional transportation projects, and also funding for regional land management and biological monitoring. It does this by acquiring and managing large tracts of lands with native habitat early in advance of those transportation projects that need mitigation. And this has really allowed us to reduce cost, accelerate the delivery of those transportation projects, implement our regional habitat conservation plans, and reduce the listing of species as threatened or endangered. Next slide, please. So today's request focuses specifically on the Habitat Conservation Fund. This is funding for the regional land management and biological monitoring provisions of the EMP. To implement the EMP, the Sandag Board entered into an MOA with Caltrans, the United States Fish and Wildlife Service, and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife. The MOA was originally signed in 2008 and renewed in 2019 and outlines the implementation strategy for the EMP. The MOA includes the allocation of $4 million per year in funding for 20 years to assist in funding the gaps in regional land management and biological monitoring to help us maintain our preserved system. And it's really a safety net that helps to protect our TransNet investments and help to eliminate the need for future listing of endangered species. Staff, with the assistance of the EMP working group, developed a 2-year work plan that identifies those key tasks and milestones. Per the MOA, annual funding for each year totaling $4 million is then brought before the board for approval. The work is then implemented through consultant contracts and land management grants. For example, the picture on the bottom, this picture shows the American badger. SANDAG has been working with the United States Geological Survey to collect data on where these badgers are living and how they move to better assess habitat and threats and find ways to improve connectivity and reduce mortality to a species that really isn't easily understood in San Diego County. In addition, roughly half of the $4 million that's allocated annually has been used for our very successful land management grant program. To date, we have completed 9 cycles of this program, and I'm excited to say that we're preparing for the release of the 10th cycle in early November. The top photo shows the San Diego Zoo's efforts as part of a completed grant project that developed a conservation breeding program for the Western burrowing owl and successfully established the first translocated population at the Rancho Ecological Preserve in South San Diego County. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned before, I mentioned the 2-year work plan. So what is the 2-year work plan? It is a plan that implements the goals and objectives of the Management Strategic Plan, or the MSP, which is shown above, which was approved in 2017. The MSP is a technical document that provides recommendations for species. Priorities are based on species endangerment, habitat threats, types and threats, and opportunities. And it develops regional objectives for the efficient and effective use of regional management and monitoring funding. Staff worked with the EMP working group to take the technical recommendations from the MSP and develop them into a work plan for fiscal year 21-22. The work plan was then approved by the SANDAG board in October of last year. The work plan, which is shown in attachment 1, pages 27 to 36 of your report, defines those goals and milestones proposed for completion in fiscal year 21-22. The work plan also tracks and monitors those implementation actions in order to measure success. Next slide, please. Attachment 2, page 37 of your report, depicts those specific recommendations for the allocation of fiscal year 2022 funding for regional management and monitoring, split between the 4 strategic goals, which are promoting sensitive species, promoting native habitat or vegetation communities, improving wildlife movement, and promoting regional collaboration. Examples of some of those key milestones SANDAG will be working on for each goal include: for sensitive species, the photo on the top left depicts the coastal cactus wren, which is a species that is in decline in the San Diego region due to loss of habitat. We have been working with the USGS and regional partners on a study that looks at wren habitat, reproduction, and foraging behaviors to help in developing conservation and management recommendations for land managers. In addition, this year, the USGS will be finishing up a genetic study that looks at wren inbreeding and how that affects its survival and productivity. For promoting native vegetation communities, we have been working on developing and implementing a regional vegetation monitoring strategy to help us determine how different habitat types, like the coastal sage scrub shown in the middle photo, is doing within our San Diego region. Wildlife movement. So I can't really talk about wildlife movement without showing a picture of the mountain lion. We are working with UC Davis and the California Department of Fish and Wildlife on developing a regional camera monitoring strategy for the mountain lion that is going to use artificial intelligence software so that we can recognize individual mountain lions by individual photos. And this is going to help evaluate the population trends for this species because this is currently a candidate for listing as threatened. And finally, regional collaboration. We have been working with the EMP working group and our regional partners to take all the data that we've been collecting since the inception of the program and developing metrics to measure the overall health of our preserved system. And I'm really excited to say that a draft report is currently in review, and we hope to have a final report presented to the PACs and the board and the public in early 2022. Next slide, please. Therefore, the Transportation Committee is asked to recommend that the Board of Directors approve the allocation of $4 million in funding for fiscal year 2022 for regional management and monitoring. And that concludes my presentation, but I'd be happy to answer any questions that anyone may have.
Thank you, Ms. Smith. Really appreciate the presentation and all your hard work on this. We will now call on the public. Are there any hands, clerk?
Thank you, Chair. Excuse me. We do have one member of the public who would like to speak. Mike Bullock, I just wanted to let you know that our timer is still not working, I believe. So I'll be timing you on my end, and I'll just jump in and let you know when that time is expired.
That'll
But
work
you can
fine.
go ahead.
Oh, yeah. Thank you very much. Well, yeah, I'll approve the $4 million for sure. I'm impressed with the work. Anybody that heard that report would be impressed. Who would have thought? It sounds like face recognition of mountain lions. So I'm going to put in a word for the mountain lion and for that California badger. That was a very beautiful picture of that animal, a very beautiful animal. You know, I belong to a Democratic club, and we had a program presented to us, and it was by the maker of a movie, and it's a movie that I haven't seen, but I think we should all see. Although I think it's I think some of the premises of the movie are oversimplified. Basically, it's saying that if we elect all Democrats, it won't get that hot, but if we elect Republicans, how hot will it get? Well, it says it will, at some point, will hit 120 degrees Fahrenheit, and this is an index temperature, so it also takes into account humidity. So there has to be sufficient amount of humidity and 120 degrees Fahrenheit. And an interesting thing happens according to this, and I think there's sound research that the movie producer had to make this statement. He said that all mammals will die. Now, we've seen 120 degrees, and all mammals that were exposed to that did not die, and that's because humidity was not high enough. But if you have humidity too high, that mammals cannot survive that. I guess we would survive. We'll be in air-conditioned buildings if such thing were to happen, but that will happen. We are on a course to do that. You know, every year we add a lot of CO2 to the atmosphere, so it's still going up. You know, it's 420 parts per million, which is absolutely shocking. It's a totally different planet. It's supposed to be 280. We've jacked it up by 50%, and it's going up more every year. So it's just a matter of time. And I don't know if it's 5 years, 10 years, or 20 years, but we will see an index temperature of 120 with high humidity. And this will be over a rather large area. It won't last long, a few days, but it could be most of several states. His research was that it's potentially could happen in the Southwest, or the Southeast actually could have temperatures like that. And so that would kill the mountain lions, all of them, in a large area, and badgers, and we would be shocked and we would be stunned as we were. It's been 120 degrees in Canada. I think that shocked everybody. We've had fires in Russia with the size of Florida, size of Connecticut in our own state. So things are unraveling. So I just wanted to throw that out there for the mammals, which are not going to be able to go into air conditioning.
Thank you, Chair. That does conclude the public comments.
Thank you very much to the members of the public for calling in. Are there any member comments? Yes, Member Bonelli.
Thank you, Chair. Ms. Smith, thank you for the presentation. This is a $4 million annual allocation. Can you give me a sense, either in the coming year or since the inception of the program, since the EMP, how much in maybe a percentage term is dedicated to environmental management vice acquisition of actual land?
Great question. So I believe your question you asked is how much do we allocate for the regional management monitoring versus how much we allocate for acquisition of funding? And it's really, oh gosh, it's as far as our mitigation for transportation improvements, that's a lot larger. The acquisition funds, we've done a lot, we've allocated or acquired over 8,780 acres of land. So I think as far as a percentage would go, it's probably about a quarter of what we do for actually our transportation impacts.
Okay, thank you. Just gives me a sense.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Member Benelli. I will now recognize Councilmember Zito. You're still muted, sir.
Thank you again. Thank you, Vice Chair Campillo. Yeah, this is a great program and I'm wholly supportive, and I just wanted to move staff recommendation.
Very good. We have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second, Benelli.
We have a second from Benelli. Are there any further comments? Hearing none, I have a motion from Councilmember Zito and a second from Member Benelli. Clerk, please call the roll.
Thank you, Chair. For the San Diego County Regional Airport Authority, Bob Lloyd.
Lloyd, yes.
Thank you. For the City of San Diego, Vice Chair Campillo.
Yes.
Thank you. For the County of San Diego, Supervisor Anderson.
Aye.
Thank you. For East County, Councilmember Mendoza.
Mendoza, aye.
Thank you. For Metropolitan Transit System, Councilmember Montgomery Stepp.
Montgomery Stepp, yes.
Thank you. For North County Coastal, Councilmember Zito.
Zito, yes.
Thank you. For North County Inland, Mayor McNamara.
McNamara, yes.
Thank you. For North County Transit District, Councilmember Edson.
Edson, yes.
Thank you. For the Port of San Diego, Commissioner Benelli.
Benelli, yes.
Thank you. And South County is absent. That motion does pass with those members present.
Thank you very much. We will now move on to item number 7. Very exciting and interesting one, the intelligent transportation systems and the next operating system. We will now have a presentation from Ms. Antoinette Meyer. Good morning, Ms. Meyer, and please begin.
Good morning, Chair. I'm glad that you think this is an exciting topic. My name is Antoinette Meyer. I'm the Director of Mobility and Innovation here at SANDAG, and joining me for the presentation today is our Technology Planning Manager, Alex Estrella. So back in June, I delivered a presentation to you on technology trends like artificial intelligence, big data, analytics. These are the technologies that are really transforming transportation, and we've incorporated these trends thoughtfully into the 2021 regional plan. Today, I'm going to talk more specifically about the work we're doing to plan and implement intelligent transportation solutions that will make the next OS operational, make it work. Several of you had questions back in June about whether there would be standards for technology and data, whether systems would be integrated and how we would coordinate all of those systems across the different agencies in the region. And those are really great questions. And that's really the focus of the presentation today. How do we really make the next operating system work? But first, what do we mean when we say intelligent transportation solutions or ITS? Simply put, ITS is the application of both technology and data to connect transportation infrastructure, our services, and people. And it's this connectivity that leads to greater safety, reliability, and ultimately the goal is to create that seamless transportation experience for people traveling around the region, regardless of what mode they're using. And while the technology piece is really important, it's not as important as the data it drives and then what we do with that data. So in our region, there are currently more than 15 major transportation systems, like our freeway management system, our transit management system. We have a ramp metering system and regional arterial management system. These systems are all supported with field equipment like sensors, and those sensors provide data on things like traffic volumes and speed, where there's incidents, where transit vehicles are located. This data is super helpful, but in many cases, collecting and analyzing and using this data is a really manual process, and we're not able to be as responsive to the data as we'd like to be. Our 2021 regional plan really ramps up our investment in intelligent transportation solutions so that we can benefit from and act quickly on transportation performance data. So many of our conversations that we've had around the 5 big moves are generally focused on the infrastructure, the hard infrastructure, and public transportation services. But ITS is really a core component of all of the big moves. Our network of complete corridors is not complete if they're not connected so that we can manage how they're used, reduce collisions, and improve emergency response times. Transit Leap will not be as fast and frequent and convenient without the technology that makes fleets operate more efficiently. And mobility hubs, they include really a wide range of ITS solutions, from smart intersections and curbs, the type of parking management systems Mr. Bullock mentioned earlier, trip planning tools like kiosks and Wi-Fi service. And then of course, ITS also helps us to better manage and operate and integrate flexible fleet services into the transportation system. I want to be really clear though, that technology is not a replacement for safe infrastructure or for transit services. It does make the infrastructure and the services work better for us though. Similar to how we've integrated technology into our daily lives, it's really hard to imagine life without our gadgets. We've got smart devices in our home that help make things easier for us. Our smartphones have become really essential tools. We use them for everything from navigation to shopping to quickly communicating with anyone. But really beyond convenience, ITS offers endless possibilities to improve safety and address the more than 40,000 traffic-related deaths, of which more than half of those are vulnerable road users. And when I talk about vulnerable road users, I'm talking about pedestrians, people on bikes, people in micromobility, people with disabilities and seniors that might need a little bit more time in intersections. Safer infrastructure is absolutely essential to solving the safety crisis that we find ourselves in, but connected vehicle technology and smart intersections provide really an added layer of safety. If cars can communicate with each other and they can detect those vulnerable users, the likelihood of collision drops significantly. Also, we know that more than half of major delays on our roadways are attributed to non-recurring conditions. So these are things like crashes or a disabled vehicle or like a large event, a Padres game, weather. ITS can address both recurring and non-recurring congestion by managing the lanes, rerouting vehicles, providing better, more timely information, and of course, faster response time to incidents. ITS also improves access and expands the options that are available to people who have limited mobility today. But not only does it provide us with more options, it really helps to make those options more competitive with driving. So it doesn't have to take 2 hours or more to travel 10 miles to get to work or school. So now I'm going to hand it over to Alex to talk about some of the work that we've done to implement ITS solutions here in the region and all the work that we're doing to prepare the region for the next operating system. So Alex.
Well, thank you, Antoinette. So as Antoinette mentioned, I am going to highlight some key ITS projects that we completed in the region, but that also walk you through some existing activities that are underway to prepare us for the future. But essentially, ITS projects are not new. They have been used in many, many years. And here you see 2 examples of traffic control devices developed by Charles Adler Jr., who was one of the industry's first innovators who paved the way for ITS. But let me bring your attention to what it looks like in manual here, but it's actually design specifications for one of those devices. So in 1919, while he was working with the Maryland and Pennsylvania Railroad, at that time, many cars didn't bother to stop at railroad crossings, resulting in collisions and deaths. So the way this traffic control device would work is that it would trigger automatically by the train as it approached the crossing. It also triggered 2 lights that would flash, which would mimic the way a swinging lantern would warn cars of oncoming cars. And this innovation was actually endorsed by the American Railroad Association, and more than 40 railroad companies adopted it. Now, not so successful was a sonically actually traffic signal developed in the late 1920s. So the way this would work is that when a driver would pull up to a red light, they would honk the horn and the light would change. But this system was really intended to be used on lightly traveled side roads for cars that needed to cross major roadways. But as you could imagine, the honking was more of a nuisance. But in this region, we have many examples of ITS technologies. And the most notable one is the I-15 managed lanes, which uses technology to adjust the lanes, manage incidents, and dynamically price those lanes based on demand. We also have the I-15 integrated quarter management system. And this project is one of 2 in the country that showcase how traffic signals and freeway operations could share data and implement response plans in real time, regardless of who owns and operates those individual systems. We have the Buses on Shoulder project, which is a 3-year demonstration project that we use connected vehicle technology to allow the South Bay Rapid buses to operate safely on selected freeway shoulders during heavy traffic. And we obviously have the Pronto Fare system, recently launched by our MTS and NCTD partners to provide enhanced ticketing and trip planning through an integrated app. So what's next for the ITS? Well, as Antoinette mentioned, ITS is essential
to the 2021 regional plan, and the Next OS is the system that really integrates and brings all these technologies together. And really, this slide features some of those immediate use cases for the Next OS, but includes investing in and upgrading in our digital infrastructure as a first step so we can manage our corridors, our mobility services, and even our ports of entry. And we have many activities currently underway, working with all of your staff at the regional and at the local level to bring these next use cases to bring them to life. But this slide features a number of activities ranging from planning to implementation, and I'm going to go through some specifics in the following slides. But for example, on the planning side, we recently updated our regional architecture that ensures that technologies talk to each other and work together. But complementing the architecture is the transportation systems management and operations strategy, which we call TSMO, that really focuses on promoting cross-agency collaboration for ITS projects. And we also recently completed 3 concept operations report, what we call ConOps, for the smart intersection system, for a proposed curb management system, and also for our proposed mobility data clearinghouse system. On the implementation side, we recently received a federal grant to test and deploy NextOS solutions in the border region as part of our Advancing Connectivity and the Economy Through Technology project. Also, we have the digital equity strategy that will bring essential communications infrastructure to the entire region. So what's the ITS, regional ITS architecture? Well, a key driver for developing the regional ITS architecture is that it focuses it's a federal requirement that in order to receive federal funding for ITS project. So we recently updated the ITS architecture as an appendix to the regional plan. And this architecture is an online tool that describes how existing and future technologies and communication system will be interoperable, meaning they need to talk to each other and also work together. But this illustration here just is an example of the information that can be derived from the ITS architecture. And this diagram really demonstrates how curb management systems could operate from different types of uses. So not only does the architecture consider the data, but also other elements from an institutional perspective to make sure that we actually provide services for freight, street parking, and shared mobility services. But there are hundreds of these diagrams that could be derived from the architecture to identify and define a concept. People and processes are as important as the technology as it focuses, and that is really the focus of TSMO. Now, historically, existing transportation systems are operated and managed as independent systems, resulting in inefficiencies and ad hoc projects that don't address systematic issues. But because we know that services don't begin or stop at our city limits, TSMO focuses on how we will work together since it proposes policies and process for this new area of transportation operations. Another piece of the puzzle is the concept operations reports that also bring the NextOS to life. For example, and here's just the exhibit for noting some of the key elements for the concept operations for the SIS, for the Smart Intersection System. But the ConOps is a key step in the system engineering process and is arguably the most important because it documents the needs of all users, not just the operators, but the people who will be using that system every day. And we recently completed the Smart Intersection ConOps, and this slide shows some of the priority that were identified from a range of users to be considered as we continue to design and deploy a smart intersection system. Now, for example, providing accessibility and safety through technologies for disabled users was identified as a key need, but also making sure that the system also provides priority treatment when needed to transit vehicles was identified as an active management in order to actively manage operations at the intersection level. Similarly, the ConOps we recently completed for the curb management system considers the different needs for the many users of the curb space. From these needs, priorities were identified that we also considered that need to be considered in the design and implementation of the deployment of the curb management system. Now, for example, this includes making sure that we understand all the varied level of data that could be collected, but that this, in order to have the system have the ability to prioritize and connect with users in real time to improve accessibility for ADA spaces, or managing the curve to serve transit and also deliveries. Now, the development of the mobility data clearinghouse canals was in response to the disruption that micro mobility caused cities. These included, for example, the dockless bikes and the scooters. Now, this ConOps was completed through a collaborative effort that included local agencies and institutions, really to develop a data clearinghouse that will provide all of you with the data and information that will allow you to manage these services, evaluate them, and also plan for their future. And through this process, we recently entered into data sharing agreements with several mobility service providers, and we'll soon be able to ingest that data from those services and feed this and start feeding the clearinghouse which is currently under development. Now we have a great opportunity to actually test and deploy some of these initial NextOS solutions. As I mentioned earlier, just this year, SANDAG was a successful recipient in the federal grant program that focuses on the planning and the development and the implementation of innovative technologies, just like the one I mentioned and described, receiving approximately $9.3 million for this project. Now, this project will deploy intelligent transportation solutions to South Bay communities, like improved real-time travel information, smart intersections, curb management, trip planning tools, and also the regional border management system for the future US-Mexico border crossing. Now, these technologies will make transportation better for the millions of people that travel from the border to the region employment centers and surrounding communities. We are very excited about this project as it will serve as a model to test and consider the application of the ITS architecture, the ConOps that you just heard, but also TISMO, which really focusing on the varied levels of partnership across the board that include our local partners, our regional partners, and also our international relationships. Now I'm going to turn it over to Antoinette, who will speak about another implementation project.
Thanks, Alex. So the 5 big moves and all of the technology solutions that Alex just described require connectivity. And it might surprise you that today there are still large parts of the region that don't even have basic broadband service. So in this map, the areas in blue show the parts of the region where we have fiber communications infrastructure. And what you'll see is that the unincorporated communities are not covered. Earlier this year, we kicked off the development of our regional digital equity strategy, and that strategy really seeks to get the entire region connected. Next Friday, I'm going to present that strategy to our board of directors, along with some members from our digital divide task force. But a key part of the strategy really is building out our communications infrastructure and doing it quickly. We've been fortunate to get this project started. We partnered with Caltrans and the county to add fiber to an 18-mile roadway rehabilitation project along the State Route 67. And the line in green there on the map is the section of the 67 that I'm talking about. And you'll see that we've filled a pretty significant gap there. And currently we are working to select an internet service provider through a competitive process who will partner with us to extend broadband service to households and businesses in this quarter. And I'd just like to thank Supervisor Anderson for his support of this project. So we have a lot of technology planning work that's underway. We've got some large scale deployment projects that are planned over the next couple of years. We threw a lot of information at you today. So now I just want to pause and give you the opportunity to ask any questions. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much for the presentation. We'll first take up public comments. If any member of the public wishes to speak, please raise your hand now. Clerk, do we have any hands raised?
Yes, thank you, Chair. Mike Bullock, you can go ahead when you're ready.
Okay, unmuted. Yeah, thank you very much. The unmuted came up there. Well, I'd like to, I very much appreciate the presentation, but I'd like to focus on near-term responsibilities that I think we have. And a lot of it comes about because of the income inequality that we have and how the systems which we currently have are really unfair to our lower income residents. The road use charge system that we have is basically a gasoline tax, and the gasoline tax is quite unfair. It's in fact, lower income people probably drive older cars. Older cars get less mileage, and so they're actually paying more, and they should probably be paying less or probably nothing. And for road use, I think that Sandag needs to make it itself felt in Sacramento. You need to try to get the state government moving, because that really, all lanes should be managed lanes, and that system is most appropriately developed with the state issuing contracts to do that technical work and to implement it as fast as possible. The focus here should be car parking. And again, income inequality plays a huge role. And I think one of the most outrageous examples of this is county parking for their employees, because downtown, close to the county building, parking can raise $450 a month. So it's a very valuable commodity. And so it's fine that we provide it, but we provide it with a system which makes the benefit proportional to driving, which is just the opposite of what you want to do. You are encouraging people to drive with that system. And so this dividend account parking system, which I presented back in 2010 and have brought it along. It covers all types of parking, but basically the parking is value priced. There's a congestion algorithm, which I actually defined that in that paper in 2010, how you would maintain sufficient vacancy. The parking is always shared. I mean, because it's employee parking, that doesn't mean that you're not doing everything you can to raise money for the employees. The earnings go to the employees, or they go to the people that shop, or they go to the people who use transit. They go, there's a number of ways that you compute those earnings, and it's fully automated, which is what we're talking about here, full automation. It has to protect privacy. You have to, don't talk around.
Thank you, Mike. And Chair, that does conclude the public comments.
Thank you very much, Clerk, and thank you to members of the public for calling in. I'll start us off with a first question, and thank you very much, Ms. Meyer, Mr. Estrella, for your presentation and all your hard work and diligence on this really, truly, it's exciting and revolutionary concept for our transportation system throughout our region. My first question is, because we are dealing with issues of technology, information, people's whether it's biometrics, it's their bank accounts and credit cards that are attached, and really the images of them. There's lots of cameras. There's lots of input from members of the public in this. I didn't hear too much about protecting privacy or oversight, or making sure that agreements that we have with state and federal partners, that we will be protecting the information from misuse or abuse by government agencies that we don't necessarily agree with. And I'm just wondering if that's been taken into account. I know it's a really important item to me and my colleagues on the San Diego City Council, and I'm wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Yes, absolutely. Data security is critical, and it probably deserves an entire presentation. Sandag is standing up a data governance program. We are now doing privacy impact assessments for technology initiatives like the Mobility Data Clearinghouse that Alex spoke about briefly in his presentation. But I do think we ought to come back and do a presentation specifically about what our data security practices are and our data governance program.
Excellent. Mr. Estrada, I see you turn on your camera unmuted. Do you have a comment or?
No, I mean, I would never, ever come and talk after Antoinette because she is so good at what she does. So, but I just want to make sure you know I'm here if you need anything.
Very good. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. Meyer. I do appreciate that. And I agree. I would love to hear a presentation on those particular items. The last thing we'd want is to create a world-class transportation system and not have the trust of the public to use it because of any number of technology issues. The second item I wanted to just make a comment about was improving safety. And I really appreciate that that the next operating system is designed to improve safety. I've heard from many constituents, and not just in my district, but across all of San Diego County about the issue of how dangerous it is right now to take a bicycle to work, to go to dinner, to go to wherever you're going in our city. And I actually I just put together a little item on Google Maps right here as I was hearing your presentation. And you could, let's imagine that someone who lives in the city of San Diego in Council District 4, where my colleague Monica Montgomery Stepp represents, lives along Imperial Avenue and works at the Costco in Santee. You would go through District 4 in San Diego, through Lemon Grove, up Lemon Grove Avenue, up Spring Street in La Mesa, up Jackson Drive and on Lake Murray Boulevard in my district, District 7, into El Cajon and up Fanita Drive into Santee. So you would cross through 5 different cities and 2 different districts in San Diego to go that 12.6 miles or so. And it's no surprise, and I'm not telling anybody anything they don't know, but many of those roads do not have protected bike lanes. And in fact, someone who was going through my district on Lake Murray Boulevard was almost killed the other day and posted the video on Twitter. And I've observed that. My staff has responded to that. So to the members of the public who are wondering how we at SANDAG and on this transportation committee are taking up life-saving measures for bicyclists, this particular next operating system is designed to do that. I would just call attention to some of the data that shows how dangerous it is to be a bicyclist or pedestrian on our streets, because I know that there's different reports and different statistics, but this is just one source that shows that if a pedestrian is hit at 40 miles an hour, there's a 90% chance of death. 35 miles per hour, a 50% chance of death. 30 miles an hour, 20% chance of death. And at 20 miles an hour, there's a 2.5% chance of death, which anybody who knows physics understands that the factor in the equation that is squared is the velocity. Velocity is the thing that is most dangerous, more than the mass, it's the velocity. And so I would encourage staff as they think through this, how that data that is going to be put into the next operating system is going to make sure that on the roads that are most dangerous, how we're going to couple that together with protected bike lanes. I really, really am concerned that we don't have a unified policy across our county, which of course is difficult with 18 different municipalities. But it seems to me that when the chance of death or serious injury is significant, that we don't have a policy or at least a directive, a policy position at SANDAG that says if the road speed is this speed, because of the significant percentage of significant bodily injury and death, that we don't have a prioritization of protected bike lanes. With that, I do want to say that I really appreciate Mr. Ekrada, Mayor Gloria, and so many other regional leaders who are taking steps to make sure our bicyclists are protected. And I stand right alongside with you to make sure that no one is put at risk for choosing to take a very responsible economic and environmental option of riding their bicycle to carry out the business of their daily lives.
I appreciate everything you said, and I just want you to know we are really serious about Vision Zero, and we're not using it as a slogan. That's why in the next couple of months you're going to see major changes to the bike program. We're actually going to recommend that the committee and the board approves moving the bike program to the major corridors, doubling the funding from the local TransNet, exactly for that reason. And when Antoinette talks about the next operating system, I just want you to know we're scratching the surface here, but we're going to put all the funding needed so we can accomplish Vision Zero. And if not, at least let people know. I don't know whether you were listening to the board last meeting, when the sister of the brother who was killed in Balboa Park came. I mean, that was very touching and very moving, and brought it home that this is real. And so everything you said, 100%, while we have 18 cities in one county, SANDAG stand to say this is our policy, and we're going to put our money where our mouth is. We're going to ask the board to put significant funding to do this right. I would rather not do it at all unless we do it right. but to have put a couple of stripes and say here is a bike lane is definitely not the right direction. So agree with everything you said and look forward to the discussion in the next few months.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. I'll conclude my comment just by saying that I really make this comment on behalf of the folks who live in the eastern part of my district and live in the eastern part of our county, where I love the fact that we have more bike lanes and protected bike lanes and bike and pedestrian safety popping up in our most urban and dense areas. But there are a lot of individuals and a lot of my constituents who take a bike to go to the grocery store, to go to church, to go to school, to go to community college, to whatever it is they're going to do, to go see family members. I want them to know that Sandag and my office and the city of San Diego is not ignoring them, that we are doing what we can and we'll do more. With that, I will now call on committee members. Councilmember Montgomery Steppe.
Thank you, Vice Chair Campillo. Antoinette and Alex, thanks so much for the presentation. Vice Chair Campillo, thank you for mentioning the privacy rights issue. Of course, as we dive into improving our systems, we always have to look at that. It came up at the city of San Diego for two reasons. One is we spent a lot of money on a system that didn't actually do what we wanted it to do. And two, data was being used by agencies that the public wasn't aware of. And so getting ahead of those things, I think will make for an even better system and allow us to communicate with folks as to the advantages of the systems. I think I am also excited about this item. I think it's great. And one of the major things that I appreciate so much about it is, changing the institutional mindset of, using data and collaborating to create a better experience for our customers. And so the prioritizing that and centering the customer experience, I think is very important. And as I see that operationalized, I really do appreciate that. The grant also is awesome. Congratulations on receiving that. One of the figures, I think is figure 1, where it compares the returns for different road investment. I thought it was very interesting that, doing things like optimizing traffic signals and integrated corridor management have a significant return on investment. And that is a shift in conversation from, just kind of building out more roads. So I appreciated all of the data that is included. My only question is around the digital equity strategy and broadband master plan. And Antoinette, you did go over an aspect of that at the end of the presentation. But as we invest more into this system, what I don't want to see is that digital divide, that gap widen. And so what are other ideas and other parts of the plan that you believe will help not only will help that close that gap and not just sort of keep it the same?
I'm glad you asked that question, Councilmember Montgomery. I've been working on the digital equity strategy for the last 9 months. It's near and dear to me, and I'm really excited to share it with the board of directors next week. But the strategy itself is very comprehensive and does not just focus on building out the infrastructure, but it also focuses on increasing adoption, making sure that service is affordable so that all households can subscribe to the internet, making sure people have devices and know how to use those devices. So it's very comprehensive. I'd also like to say that just this morning during the meeting, I got a note that we made our first of several donations of computers to San Diego Futures Foundation. That's an organization who's going to refurbish those computers and make sure that they get into the hands of folks who need them, who can't afford a device. And so that's also part of our digital equity work moving forward. And I would encourage all of your organizations to consider that as you're retiring old technology to get that technology into the hands of organizations like San Diego Futures who can make sure that we extend the life of it and get it to people who need it.
Thank you very much. Thank you. That concludes my questions and comments.
Thank you, Council Member. I will now recognize Councilmember Zito.
Thank you again, Vice Chair Campillo, and thank you also to Antoinette and Alex for the great presentation. Just kind of diving a little bit deeper into the comments made by the vice chair around safety in particular, and to some degree privacy as well. You know, one of the things that can drive safety is technology causing our infrastructure to be used in unanticipated ways. I think the most classic example of this right now is the mapping programs that will look for optimum routing that will cause high volumes of traffic to be driven down streets that weren't intended for that type of volume, just to get around bottlenecks and other types of obstructions that may normally be full with pedestrians and cyclists and may not have the appropriate protections in place to protect those other types of users of those roads. So I'm curious how that is being considered, and if we are working with, you know, if we are able to work with private companies such as Google, Apple, and others to make sure that as we build a smart infrastructure that the vehicles or the uses of the particular roads are meant and optimized for particular use and don't suddenly change use without the necessary infrastructure being put in place.
That's a great comment, Councilman Zito. So for example, because we know that we're going to be collecting a lot of data, and essentially at the public agency perspective, we collect not only data from our roads or from the sensing technology, but we also have, for example, traffic signal data. We also have information on the number of lanes at the local level. And that's the level of information that all these third-party providers essentially don't have. So when we partner with them, we provide a data feed, but also try to partner with them to say, hey, listen, there's some institutional governing components at the local level that you need to consider, because you have to take responsibility on how you use your data. Now, it is a huge lift, but we do partner with them. And ideally, the key here is that they would share their data with us, but at the same time, we would share that level of infrastructure data to really provide an appropriate picture, really a situational awareness of the surrounding environment, and not just, you know, the pings on the phones or who's traveling on what streets, but ideally the traffic signal information, maybe the number of lanes. But that's one of the key things that we work with third-party providers. Again, we're not in the data business in terms like the third-party providers, but ideally we play a responsibility. We're responsible for some of this concepts that they implement, but at the same time, they'd also be responsible. So we're working closely when we partner with these third-party providers as well.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, I don't know that I quite got to the heart of it, but I appreciate the information, because I understand the data sharing part of it. But, you know, myself as an elected representative and also working with other elected representatives, I wonder if there is a need, an opportunity, and almost, if we want to have safer facilities, a requirement to start looking at what types of policies and or regulations should be put in place to make sure that the data is used appropriately, and that the solutions that are crafted by the private industry aren't making, you know, aren't causing dangerous situations such as high volumes of traffic going down a street meant primarily for pedestrians and cyclists. And if there, you know, there's opportunities for that, you know, it seems like it's something we could start perhaps working on in collaboration with the staff level from the perspective of what's being done technically and a data perspective.
Absolutely.
Okay. Thanks. That's my comment, Chair, Vice Chair.
Thank you, Council Member. I will now recognize Commissioner Bonelli.
Thank you. Thanks for the presentation, Antoinette and Alex. This is where I sort of remain optimistic. Good old American ingenuity, technology advances, men and women thinking of innovative solutions to keep our mobility going. Having said that, I'm going to sort of maybe ask a speculative question. As I look towards the regional plan, whether I'm out 10 or 20 years or maybe out to 2050, at least in my opinion, I think the vast majority of folks, especially during commuters, are still going to be using the backbone, the highway network we have. I'm not advocating for any more concrete being laid down. And I'm very appreciative of the active transportation, walking, biking, taking public transit. Having said that, though, I think the plan says the reality is there's a lot of people that are still going to be on our highways and byways. As envisioned, and here's the speculative part, you know, we talk about the throughput capacity or volume of freeway lanes. In the plan, do you see this doubling, tripling? You know, my idea is, you know, you have the vast majority of people that are on the highways are driving ZEV vehicles. So that's great for sustainability, but give me the idea for the mobility or traffic vehicle, the side of the coin, traffic congestion. Does that make sense? I'm just trying to get a sense for how we can maximize the capacity of our existing network.
So I'll take a stab first, Antoinette. So that's a great comment, Mr. Bernelli. So the way we would think about capacity is that you can only reach certain levels of capacity, no matter based on obviously some design components or the nature or the characteristics of the roadway. And that capacity is pretty much set in stone per se. If we were to continue to address our infrastructure needs or mobility needs for the future using the traditional way that we would do, ultimately we would need 10 or 20 miles of or lanes to address the future demands. But what the technology brings to the table is that we're able to apply some concepts to ideally squeeze as much capacity as we can. Antoinette mentioned that 50%, almost 50% of congestions due to recurring congestion. And that means when there's an incident or a crash that our capacity is limited. But through technologies, for example, through speed harmonization or advanced sign warns or upcoming transitioning points on the weaving of the lanes, that capacity really allows us to address either the friction between the vehicles. The technology also allows us to provide that advance notice of something happening on the roadways. The technology also allows us to, for example, provide information on upcoming weave-in sections. But the idea here is because of that capacity that is lost, that technology minimizes the friction on the vehicles, but also we're able to address those bottlenecks or those incidents much faster and much quicker, so that we would store the capacity at a much faster rate. And one of the most common sort of statistics developed at the US DOT, in doing so, during a peak hour, for example, peak period, during an incident, for every 1 minute that a lane is blocked during that peak period, travelers can experience up to 4 minutes of delay for an incident before it's cleared. And that means, just to put it into context, for one lane that is affected in 20 minutes, travelers can be expected to sit down in congestion for up to 1.5 hours. But ideally, the idea behind the technology not only does it allow us to address recurrent and non-recurrent congestion, but also provides the ability to provide access to our other modes, just like we're playing on the managed lanes. So that's the context here, that through the use of technology, otherwise we would continue to build these lanes. But again, because the capacity is set, we would always reach those capacity levels, and then we will also operate the way we would usually do. But the idea here is through the 5 big moves and through the transit leap and the managed lanes concept, complemented with technology, we'll be able to actually squeeze as much capacity as we can and make our transportation systems more efficient.
Yeah, we've done some analysis of the actual capacity increases and throughput based on managed lane concepts, and we can get you that information, Commissioner.
I much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. I see there's no further hands raised by committee members, and just want to thank once again, Mr. Estrella, Ms. Meyer, for your presentation and for your thoughtfulness and your answers to our questions. At this point, we are at the end of our agenda. And with that, our next Transportation Committee meeting is scheduled for Friday, November 12th, 2021 at 9 a.m. Just want to thank staff for all their hard work on the items today, Mr. Ekrada and Mr. Linthicum for being present to answer any additional questions, Ms. Webb, our clerk, for your great work, and our interpreter, Carlos. I switched over to the Spanish channel for a little bit, and you're doing a great job. We really appreciate all your hard work and making sure that our committee is accessible to so many more members of our community. And last but not least, I'd like to wish our chair, who couldn't be here today, Supervisor Nora Vargas, a very happy belated birthday. Hope you're enjoying it. And we are now adjourned.